You don't want to miss today's podcast as I interview my brother Chris Fugate. Learn what it's like to go through the training of a Kentucky State policeman. Learn what it's like to go undercover as a trooper. And then you don't want to miss his testimony as God called him to preach. And now he's been the pastor of the Gospel Light Baptist Church in Hazard, Kentucky for 15 years. For over 40 years, I've preached the Bible as a pastor across America and around the world. I've led in the work of the local church. I've been actively engaged in the political process in both our state and nation. The purpose of the church is to stand. I've stood alongside veterans and first responders. My heartbeat is revival, and I refuse to sit on the sidelines. So buckle up and let's tackle the issues, challenges, and opportunities facing your family and mine head on. Welcome to the podcast today. It is good to be with you, and as with every guest I have had, I'm really excited today to have my brother Chris Fugate as my guest on the podcast. In fact, we're going to do two podcasts. We're going to talk about, I'm going to tell you the list of things we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about his personal life through from childhood, high school, becoming a state policeman, becoming a pastor, and then going to the State House in Frankfort. So all of those are interesting things to learn about. In the next podcast that I do with Chris, we're going to talk about how Frankfort works. Some people would say how Frankfort doesn't work, but there are a few folks that do work and get some things accomplished. We're going to ask some pretty hard questions. As you know, we always deal with the issues that head on in our podcast. First of all, let me welcome my brother Chris. It's good to have you. Thanks for being on the podcast.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
There are three of us, three boys. I'm the oldest, and you're the second. David is the youngest. I am 61. You are
56.
56. What's David, 51?
2.
David's 52. And we grew up in southeast Kentucky. I believe Grandpa built the home place house in the 40s.
Some 40s, 50s, yes.
Okay, 40s or 50s. And you live in the home place.
I do. I'm blessed to be able to live there, yes.
Yeah, we grew up there. A lot of good memories there. First of all, where did you go to grade school?
Well, I started out at Chavies Elementary, the first grade. Miss Napier was my teacher, and she just went to heaven this past week.
What about that?
And then Dad, of course, started Hazard Christian Academy. I think it was in 76, and went there from second grade all the way through graduation.
So you graduated high school when?
In 1987.
1987.
A long time ago.
Yes. Yeah, I often say we were born back in the 1900s. That seemed like forever ago.
We were, yes, sir.
When did you become a Christian?
So I got saved when I was 11 years old, November of 1981. We was, of course, raised in church. Everybody probably that watches this will know that. But I was in the bed on a Saturday night and was in, just thought about, the Lord coming back. And, of course, hearing Dad preach and knew the gospel and knew all that. And I just knew that I was not saved. I was not ready to go. And I got up and went downstairs to Dad's bed, peeked in the door. They slept there at the bottom of the steps, and peeked in the room. And I actually went back up and down the steps. The third time, when I looked in the door, I walked in and I touched Dad. I said, Dad, he said, what's the matter, son? And I just said, Dad, I want to be saved. And I got down on my knees beside the bed there and asked the Lord to save me that night, November 1981. And it's interesting, that room was the room of judgment. That's where we got our whoopings. When Dad would say, boy, get to the front room, I knew what was going on. But that night, it was the grace of God, and that's when God saved me. Yeah, 11-year-old boy.
He was a good dad, wasn't he?
He was the best.
He was a good dad. Now, he believed in discipline, but he gave plain instruction and we had to be dumb enough to break the instruction and go against what he said, but we did.
That's right.
Always used a belt.
Yep. And he would look at you over them glasses, them black rim glasses, and you knew you better straighten up. And you could hear his snap, his finger snap over anything.
Yes.
And but one time's all we got told. I think the worst whipping I ever got, I was 12, and I was mean, and me and David were mean in the youth group, and my father-in-law was not even my father-in-law now, but he was over the youth group, and he came up, and I guess he was was down in the mouth, and Dad said, "Steve, what's the matter?" And he said, "All them boys." He said, "Was it my boys?" And I heard him. And my father-in-law, he's like, "Well, yeah, it was your boys too." And man, I don't know if you remember this, but Dad had promised to get us an Atari game.
Oh, yeah.
Out of the Sears Roebuck catalog. We looked through that catalog, and we wanted one of them games. And he had promised to get us one of them, but then that night, that ruined it for us. Because he whooped us, and he said, "You ain't getting no game if you don't know how to act in church." And he whooped us hard, buddy. And that's the last one I got. And I guess that done me.
Yeah.
Me and David. So
I graduated high school in 1982, and the most difficult thing I'd faced in life up to that time, I left to go to Bible college. And the only reason I left is I loved Dad so much that I wanted to work for him, and he thought I should get a Bible college education. We dreamed together. We built a cabin together. Cut down the logs, used the old, actually it was a horse then.
A horse pony, yeah.
Had a horse pony that pulled the logs with.
Yep.
And then when I was in college the second year, Dad called and he said, "Son, I've got cancer." And we found out Dad had a bad cancer. It was a fast-growing cancer. And tough time, wasn't it? How old were you?
When Dad got sick, I was stink. I shouldn't be emotional.
Tough. It's tough when we talk. Every time I talk about it, it's tough.
I was 13, and then when Dad passed, I was 15, and it was a tough time.
Yeah. You was 15. I turned 21 August 25th, 1985, and Dad died August 27th.
Yeah, 2 days later.
August 27, 1985, and it's hard to believe that last year was 40 years. I still have the last pair of Dad's shoes in my closet. Those old brown wingtip shoes, they got holes in the bottom of both of them.
Yeah, I've got his Bible, the last Bible that he preached out of. And it's funny that we talk about this now because this past weekend when the storm came, I was at home, and Angela brought me a box of stuff to go through just trying to clean up stuff. But in that box, there was the bag from the funeral home that had all Dad's, the book where people signed cards and letters. But his death certificate was there, and he died at 5:35 on August the 27th on the death certificate.
Yeah.
And I remember we were at school that morning. Me and David were. You were in Lexington with Mom at the hospital. And we were down beside the church there at Bible Baptist when you all came in. I remember still you all coming to tell us, and I knew, of course, that Dad had passed. But, Dad always said, God's good. And on his tombstone, it's on his tombstone. And really that time in my life, man, I was like, if God's so good, why in the world is Dad gone?
Sure.
And
that's what a 15-year-old would think, and their 15-year-olds watching us right now, they think the same thing.
Yeah. And so I would say to them, or to anybody, God is good. Through that tough time, God grew us. We didn't know it then probably, but spiritually he grew us.
Yeah.
And then you became not just a big brother, but a dad, a father figure to me and David. And, kind of just showed us, you were the example we followed then. And I'm thankful for that.
So you were a sophomore in high school. Dad died in August. You had finished your sophomore year.
Right.
My father-in-law, Charlie Cornett, state policeman.
Yep.
About the only fella I knew that was as mean as Dad. And it's amazing. Two of the most loving men I ever knew. Yeah. And yet they could be tough and mean as could be.
Yes, they could be quick too.
So he became our high school basketball coach. I was the pastor. At 21, I became the pastor of the church.
You was young, buddy.
I was too young. Hard to believe this coming April be 40 years ago.
Yeah.
So Charlie Cornett became basketball coach.
Yep.
And it's that was important. Sports was important, weren't they? And they are important.
Yeah, they are important because it teaches you more than just playing basketball. Charlie became, he didn't take the place of Dad, but he became a second dad to me. And he taught me more about life in general through basketball. The discipline of basketball, the authority in basketball, listening to the coach, respecting the referee. He made it real plain. I'll talk to the referee. You keep your mouth shut and play ball. But he taught us teamwork and what we could do as a team. And then, of course, the state police had a basketball team. Every post had a team, and so Charlie, after school was over, or
these teams played against each other.
They played against each other. But you know how Charlie was. The guys at post, some of the old troopers that we knew, they would go play ball 2 or 3 days a week. At the old river processing gym. Well, Charlie would sometimes get me out of school and take me to go play ball with the state police, and so that relationship with Charlie really helped me grow, as a person and into a young man.
Sure.
And he put in when he coached, he was more than our coach.
Yeah.
They
rolled up and you saw those state police cars and you saw those state police uniforms, you saw the haircut, and there wasn't any hair. They just about had it all cut off.
Right.
But you saw the character. I mean, I remember how much I admired them then. I still do. Still do.
Yeah.
And it was just exciting. It was quite an honor that those kind of men, for me, and trying to watch over Mom, who was 39.
Right. Yeah.
And you was 15, David was 12.
Yeah.
And it was a blessing to me that they helped you.
Yeah. And then, of course, there was times that we'd go play tournaments in West Kentucky, and Charlie would drive a vehicle, and then he would put me in he had a Jeep at that time, and I would drive this Jeep. Of course, I had my license in my senior year. But we would drive to tournaments, and Charlie would haul some boys in his car, and then I would have 2 or 3 boys with me in that Jeep, and we'd go to play ball. And I think the one time I'm talking about, it snowed, so we couldn't take a church van. So he said, we're going anyway.
Yeah.
And so we drove out West Kentucky and played basketball. But that, that relationship turned into, for me, I went away to college for a semester, came back and got married, and worked at CarQuest Autowise at that time for Roy Combs.
Mm-hmm.
And then the phone rang one day, a long time before cell phones, and it was Charlie on the phone, and he said, you need a job? And I said, yes, sir, I do. And a better job. And he said, do you know how to type? I didn't know how to type. Back then, boys didn't much take typing.
Sure.
I mean, that's just the way it was.
Right.
And I said, no, I can't type. And he said, well, you got to be able to type 25 words a minute. So he called the vocational school and set it up with a lady there for me to come after work. And she taught me typing.
Uh-huh.
And so I got to where I could do the 25 words a minute, and applied to be a dispatcher at the state police post.
What year was that?
That was in 91.
91?
Yeah. So I started, that was probably all that preparation was in the fall of 90.
Yeah.
And I got the job February the 1st of 91 as a dispatcher. And so I started there, and I was bashful. I'm really bashful now. I just, but anyway, that job, they put me with two ladies, Teresa Griffith and John Pratt's wife, Glenna. And of course, they talked a lot, and that's what I remember the first night I went to work. I was like, man, I don't know if I don't know if I can do this job, but they got me on my shyness. So it came that Teresa and Glenna both were dating troopers or married to troopers. They were married to John. One was dating one, and the other one was married. John and Glenna were married, and so they would go for an hour lunch. They said, Chris, you care if we go for an hour lunch, and you can go ride with John for an hour for your lunch. I said, yeah. So that's really how I became. I loved John Pratt.
Yeah.
John they would go eat. He would come back, and he'd just holler on the radio, 670 Hazard, meet me outside. So when Glenna and Teresa came in, I'd go out and get in the cruiser and take my lunch break and go out and just watch him work the road and take complaints, and I loved it.
And so you was a dispatcher, but you
would
wrote
ride
with John, so you wanted to become a trooper.
I did. And so Charlie was the administrative sergeant.
Charles Cornett.
Charles Cornett was the administrative sergeant. My ball coach, my mentor, he's the administrative sergeant. So I guess it was in 92. He would come into work early of a morning. He would come in at 5:30 every morning. And so I'd go get coffee made and all that. And, when he'd come in, he'd come give him a cup of coffee and go downstairs in the old post. And one day I got the nerve up. I'm going to go talk to Charlie about, I want to be a trooper. And so I went in there, and he just he ignored me. You know how he was.
Oh, yeah.
Just, And I said, Coach, that's what I called him. I said, Coach, I said, I need to talk to you a minute. He said, what do you want? And I said, I want to be a trooper. And he turned around and looked at me. He said, you don't need to be no trooper, and get back in there and get to work. And just turn around. And so I said, okay,
Yeah.
So I went back in there and got to work. And then I guess it was probably 2 weeks later, he came in early. And I said, I'm going to talk to him again. So I went in there and I said, Coach, I want to be a trooper. And he said, okay. He said, I'll help you. And so that we went, me, Richie Miller, Scotty Sandlin. If you remember Blue East Step, he had a brother named Waylon.
Oh, yeah.
Got a brother named Waylon.
Mm-hmm.
We all went to Frankfurt to take the test to be a trooper. And there was 2,800 people.
Wow.
That had applied for the state police to take the test. And so I'm like, man, there ain't no way I'm getting in this. There ain't no way, And so we took the test, and I didn't get in the first class. My score was good, but it wasn't good enough to get. Now they only hired 60.
Okay, so they took 60 out of
2,800.
60 out of 2,800. So they took the highest scores.
Right. So, and it was a combination of written, oral, oral interview and different things. But my cumulative score wasn't as good as, So anyway, I didn't get in the first class, but they ran a class right after that. And so I got in the second class off that list.
What month was that?
So I started January of 94 in the State Police Academy, and it was cold. It was cold, I remember. And of course, we hadn't never been in the military. Dad didn't really raise his voice at us.
No.
He just looked at us pretty much. We were boys and snapped his finger. And so the military world was not something that I was, So I would, I've always been pretty big. Now, not out of shape big. I'm out of shape big now. But back then, I played basketball all the time. I weighed 242 pounds when I went to the academy. And I remember the first night we went through the line, of course, when they meet you, when we walked in, they were like screaming at us, get down the hallway, don't look at me, keep your eyes up, and I'm like, what in the world? So we go change, we put our t-shirts and sweats on, and we go through the supper line, and they had roast beef, mashed potatoes, and gravy, and green beans.
That's your favorite.
Oh, that's my favorite. Roast beef's my favorite.
Oh, yeah.
So I got that, and then they had a big pile of pasta salad. Well, I don't know if we ever ate pasta salad growing up. I don't ever remember us eating something like that. So I go through the line. I've got my roast beef, mashed potatoes. I get to the end of the line. John Hall's there. He's a drill instructor. He was a Marine drill instructor too before state police. And so I get to the end of the line. I said, "Sir, good evening, sir." And I turned to go. Of course, I don't know military turns and all that. But I took about 2 steps, and he said, "Cadet Fugate, get back here, son." And he said, "You're fat." And he said, "But you're going to lose that fat. You can do it my way or your way." And he said, "But I suggest you put that roast beef back and eat pasta salad." So for 12 weeks, I ate pasta salad for lunch and supper. For breakfast, I ate a half of a grapefruit and a piece of dry toast. And the little fellas beside of me, they would take food off other people's plate and give them extra food.
Yeah.
But that's all I had. No pop. I remember the 3rd or 4th week, it was Christopher's birthday. He turned 2. And so we went to Pizza Hut that Saturday.
So did you get to go home?
On the weekend. So
Okay.
So on Friday nights, we got to go home. We had to be back there by 2 o'clock on Sunday.
Right.
So on Saturday, it was Christopher's birthday. So we went to Pizza Hut, and I ate pizza. So Monday morning, they would fall us out. First thing, Cadet Class 71 prepared to fall out in 2 minutes. And when they'd say fall out, we had to get out there, stand at attention. And I was learning all that stuff, again, the attention and the military stuff. So they're coming down the hallway. I had lost 20 pounds, in just 3 or 4 weeks. I mean, they run me to death, all of us. So they were coming down the hall and they would say, "Cadet so-and-so, how much weight did you lose?" And he said, "I've lost 5 pounds, sir." Good job, Cadet so-and-so. And then he'd ask the next person, "How much weight you lost?" "Sir, 7 pounds, sir, 3 pounds, sir, 10 pounds. And I was like, when he comes to me, he's going to be really thankful, excited. Yes.
Impressed. Yeah.
And he asked me he said, "Cadet Fugate, what'd you eat this weekend?"
Oh, he didn't ask you.
No, he asked me on the
Oh, my.
spot. He said, "What did you eat this weekend?" So I'm standing there, I'm like, man, he's going to kill me when I tell him pizza. So I said, "Sir, I ate pizza, sir." He said, "Pizza, I have failed to motivate you." Well, that was a rough day for me. Push-ups, set-ups. He said, go to my office and get my book out. He had a little old memo pad book. He said, "I want you to look up how many fat grams is in pizza." And then I had to, he about killed me that day. And they told me in the academy, they said, "Don't ever look them in the eye, because if you look them in the eye, they think you're trying to threaten them."
Right.
So every time they would come to me and was in my face, I would look at their forehead.
Yeah. Because Dad always made you look at him right.
Right, that's right. He'd say, "Look at me, son."
Yeah.
And so I could hear people saying, "Don't look them in the eye, don't look them in the eye." Well, about the 12th week, they were coming down through there. We had our BDUs on. Now, they just let us start ironing the BDUs after about 6 or 7 weeks. They wouldn't let us iron them, because we weren't worthy to have them ironed, And so Angelina would iron my BDUs. And so he comes down through there, and he's looking at everybody's uniforms, inspecting them. And he comes to me and he says, "Fugate," he said, "who ironed your uniform, son?" I said, "Sir, my wife, sir." And he said, "Well, don't let her quit her day job, son." And to me, that insulted her.
Sure.
So when he said that, I just looked him right in the eye and I said, "Sir, yes, sir, I understand, sir." And he never bothered me the rest of the time. I wish I'd have done that in week 6. But, because it wouldn't, because once I guess once I don't know, because they tear you down, they build you up, they tear you down, they build you up. They talk to you and, discipline, and they say respect is never given, it's only earned. And that's true. You can't demand respect from people.
Right.
You have to learn to respect people.
Right.
And you have to earn people's respect. And they were instilling that in us to when we get out there on the road and somebody's barking at you, cussing you, and you've rode with me before, and you saw people that would cuss me and do different things, that they were trying to teach us and instill in us, look, just self-control.
Right.
Self-control, control yourself, control your emotions, control, your anger. And so that was just part of it, and, looking back on it, people ask me, was it hard? It was the hardest thing I ever done.
Yeah.
Going out there in weather like we've got right now, doing push-ups on a helicopter pad, every morning. That was hard.
How long was the training?
22 weeks.
Wow.
22 weeks. So I was gone for 22 weeks from,
6 months.
Yep. Yes, sir. It was tough.
But you graduated when? June?
Graduated in June of 94, and was blessed to be able to go back home to work. Now, Hazard had a name across the state as being a tough place. Rough people.
Well, that would have been true not just in 94. That was true in 1963 or 1967. It was 67 or 63. Family will correct me if I'm wrong here. When my father-in-law, your coach,
Right.
Charlie, went to Breathitt County. I mean,
Right.
they had the name Bloody Breathitt.
Right.
Our family's from Breathitt.
Right.
So Hazard did have that. What counties did they cover post?
So they covered Perry, Breathitt, Leslie, Knott, and Letcher. But growing up there, I know that it was a rough place because of things that happened at the church,
Right.
But to us, I mean, that was
our
life.
culture. Yeah.
That was life.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So in the academy, when they come down to the last 4 weeks, I think it was, they let us put in for 3 posts. Like what would your first 3 posts be if you got to choose, And so I picked Hazard, of course that's where I lived, and Richmond, and then Frankfort. And because of you being here, to come here, if I got sent somewhere, if I couldn't get Hazard, then come somewhere where I could come close. One thing I'll say, I was elected as a class chaplain. In Cadet Class 71. I served as a chaplain.
What week did that happen of 20?
That was about the 2nd or 3rd week.
Wow.
And so we had a Wednesday night church service.
Wow.
While I was in the academy,
I remember that now, but I hadn't thought about that in a long time.
Yeah.
In fact, we've got a young man here in our college, in our church, Holguin, that's a new trooper. He got to be the chaplain in his class, and I remember telling him that story.
So that was an honor, to be elected by the whole class.
Okay. It's chosen by the class.
Right. To be the class chaplain. So anyway, when they asked me about my 3 choices, people would say, Ace, what's it like in Hazard? And I would say, you don't want to go to Hazard where it's bad. It's bad because I want to go home, to work. And so we graduated, and Courtney Longacre, Jeff Baker, Crandall Hurt, and Ron Mullins and I, we got to go to Hazard to work. Gary Rose was the post commander then. And of course, Charlie was still there Charlie was the administrative sergeant, but he really was what I saw.
He was a veteran.
He was the veteran that even the guys that were in higher rank looked to Charlie for decisions and all that. So Gary Rose called me. I was in the academy, and he said, if I gave you the choice of working Perry County, Breathitt County, or Letcher County, what would you choose? And I said, well, I would choose to work Perry County where I grew up because my home's in Perry, church is in Perry, and all that. He said, well, I've never done this before, but I'm going to let you work Perry County, and Charlie says that you can handle it. So that was a blessing to be able to go home and to work,
And you stayed there your whole career, didn't you?
I stayed. I was assigned to Hazard Post until 2003.
So 94 to 2003.
Not 2003. I was assigned to Hazard Post from the time I graduated academy until about 2007.
Okay.
Because 2003, I left the road. I worked Perry County on the road from the time I came out of the academy until September, I think, of 2003. I think that's right. And excuse me, working the road was a lot of fun, and that sounds bad, but it was working the road. Being a trooper was not about just putting people in jail. There's so much more. I believe this today, that a Christian police officer, and I was not always the best Christian that I've ever been when I was a trooper. There was times that I was away from the Lord, and we won't talk about that, I don't guess, but I loved if I'd go up in a holler and I saw boys out playing basketball on the road. You know how it was.
Sure.
The basketball goes right in the right edge of the road, and that's how they had a blacktop court. You know, and I'd pull my cruiser up and I'd get out, and sometimes I pulled my gun belt off and pulled down to my t-shirt and played ball. You know, or see an older couple out in the garden. I've stopped the cruiser and walked out in the garden and just talked to people. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed getting to know kids in the community, and even trying to influence, kids for right.
Yes.
The main thing to me that was killing our people was dope.
Yeah.
And so there was times that I couldn't catch the dope dealer, so to speak, but I'd just go parking right down from their house.
Mm-hmm.
And when cars would come up there to buy dope, I'd say, look, they're not open today. And I would turn people around.
Yeah.
So the drug detective retired in 2003, and he came to me, he said, why don't you take my job? I said, I don't want that job. I like working the road. He said, well, just try it for 6 months. And so the captain then, Danny Webb, gave me the job as the street level drug narcotics officer.
Now, this was the day Oxycontin, was that the first drug you dealt with?
That was, Oxycontin actually was not there in 2003 yet.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. It was there in 2003. In 96 is when we found the first Oxycontin, and I think it was 96 or maybe 98. John Couch, John Marine was a deputy, and we were working one night. I was still on the road at that point, and we stopped a truck. The guy took off running on foot, threw something up on top of a building, and called the fire department. We arrested the guy, put him in the car, and called the fire department. I went up on a ladder truck, and it was a pill bottle, and in that pill bottle was green pills marked OC on one side and 80 on the other side. I'd never seen any of them. And that was the first Oxycontin that was taken in the area that I know of. So from there, the drug investigation started in Oxycontin. You're right. And then in 2003, when Smoot retired, then I got that job. So then they formed a drug task force, which consisted of at that time, there was Unite that Congressman Rogers funded from the federal government. Mm-hmm. And then there was HIDA, which was high intensity drug trafficking areas. Mm-hmm. That was also funded by Congressman Rogers, but it was a national task force. Unite was more just Kentucky. So we started working on that. We started working on just a local task force. Me, John Couch with the sheriff's office, Russell Dishner with the police department. And we were doing more drug cases just about than the entire drug section of the state police.
Yes.
And so in 2007, they transferred us to Desi. They just called my sergeant, said, Chris is transferred.
Yeah.
They called me and I said, I don't want to be transferred. I didn't want to leave home. And so, but it actually.
But they wanted you to work drugs in a larger region.
Right. That's right. In a larger region. And so then we started the HIDA Drug Task Force. The HIDA Drug Task Force, we worked mid to upper level drug dealers.
Yeah.
And we would work like in Detroit, Dayton, Chicago.
And the suppliers that was
we would catch somebody local, and then we would try to follow that case up through phone records, through testimony, through undercover buys.
Right.
And we would try to catch the head of the snake up and wherever.
Right.
And prosecute them in federal court.
Yeah.
And we did that, and Bean Campbell joined that task force.
Right.
And we worked that task force in our area, but it expanded, and we would go out to different states and different places.
Now we're talking about late 90s, early 2000, and you worked Perry, Breathitt. Well, you worked the whole district in that area.
Right.
Now what's interesting to me is J.D. Vance, who is now the Vice President of the United States of America, he was from our home county. He is from our home county where both of our grandmothers are from.
Right. River Caney is where they're from, our grandmas.
Yep, our grandmothers are. Now, did you run into, because we know about Vance's testimony, we know his story, what a great story, to be an overcomer and all of that. Did you know any of the Vance family?
I didn't know any of them, but I would have been, so I'm probably about 12, 14 years older than him. So I was probably a drug detective in 2000, from 2003 to 13 is when I worked the drug detail.
But the world he describes in Hillbilly Elegy was the world you were working in drugs.
That's right. That's exactly right.
You met the Vice President?
I have met the Vice President.
Where?
Yes. Met him here in Lexington at an event they had at the Crafts had him in, and he met with a bunch of the local folks before the election.
Yeah. Now, I love talking about this. One night I was preaching a revival over in Virginia, West Virginia, and I came across the mountain and I said, "Where are you? Are you working tonight?" And you said, "Yes." And I actually rode with you for a while. That was an interesting. Tell that story fast.
Okay. You talking about the shooting?
Well, no, the shooting.
Okay.
We was looking for a man.
Okay.
You were looking.
They've given me a complaint on a vehicle. I think it was a beige colored vehicle, if I remember right.
I'm dressed just like I am right now, white shirt.
That's right. Yeah. And I'm in uniform. That's when I was on the road.
Yeah.
And so we start toward Vico, and we go by the Vico Shell mark, and then the BP mark. And you said, "There's that car you're looking for." And so we pulled in. The guy was drunk, and so we arrested him. And back then we didn't handcuff people. It just, we just didn't handcuff people. That's just the way. Most of the time, if you handcuff people, they wanted to fight. We just search them and throw them in the car. And so we're going down the road, and the guy starts.
He's in the back.
He's in the back, yeah. And he starts cussing and going on. I'm like, "Look, buddy, my brother's a preacher. We don't want to listen to that." And if you remember, he told me, he said, "I'll cut your guts out when I get you."
He did.
And so when he said that, I stopped the car, opened the back door, jerked him out, and cuffed him.
Handcuffed him because he threatened to kill you.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I remember, because he said, "You're a sergeant or you're somebody."
Right. He thought he was my supervisor.
I was half scared to death. I just sat there thinking, "Lord, get me out of this mess."
Right, yeah. So we get to the jail, and they took him up, and when they searched him, he actually had a big knife taped to the inside of his thigh that I missed when I searched him. And had God not caused us to stop and cuff him, he very well could have hurt one of us. But every time you rode with me, something bad happened. We were down on 28 one night, and you rode with me, and they hollered at me and said they had a shooting at and I know I'm talking probably.
No, go ahead. No. I remember the story well. It was another time I thought, "My goodness, what a mess I'm in."
But they hollered at me and said, "We've got a shooting at Rowdy Mountain," and we took off, and we get there. We were the first ones there. If you remember, we were the first police officers there. I was the first one there. And so when I got there was a guy laying half in and half out.
Yeah.
He was laying on the porch, dead.
He told me to stay in the car, and I said, "Don't worry."
Yeah, right. And the sheriff's office came up shortly after that, but why I hate liquor so bad today is on that porch. There was, Budweiser cans and most of the stuff that I dealt with as a trooper that was fatalities or deaths, or there was liquor or dope involved. And I hate liquor. I hate it today. But that was another intense night when you rode. Something always bad.
I remember when you arrested him and you were bringing him out, he was intoxicated and yelling, "I just killed a man. I just killed a man."
Yeah.
It was just so sad. Yeah. That brings me to the next thing I want to talk about. You'd been working undercover for a while.
Yeah.
And another young boy died.
Yeah.
17, 18, 19 years old. And you went to a small house on the side of a mountain, and a woman said, "Chris, you're a man of faith. Can I ask you a question?"
Yeah.
What'd she ask you?
Yeah. 2007, I went to camp, Circle C Baptist Ranch, brought some teenagers. God dealt with me about preaching that week, and I didn't want to. 2008, I surrendered to preach. 2011, fast forward, and this is where we're at. I got a complaint that this lady had a meth lab in her house. We went there, and her son actually was probably 24, 25 that had died. And there was a gift Bible laying there on the dresser. I picked it up. We arrested the guy out of the closet, but when I picked it up, a picture of her son was in that Bible, and she started crying. She said, "Chris, you're a Christian man. See, can I ask you a question?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "Is my son in heaven or hell?" And she said, "Every night I wake up."
Was he buried close to there?
Yes.
Okay.
And she said, "Every night I wake up and I can hear him screaming, 'Mom, get me out of hell.'" And I told her, I said, her name was Christina. I said, "Christina," I said, that's between him and the Lord. We walked up on the hill. We went out of the trailer and up on the hill to his grave, and I sat down beside of her, and we wept together. And that's really where God changed my life, as far as I'd already started to preach, but I wasn't pastor. And I knew that there had to be a church that would love people like Christina Little. And I promised God that day, I left that holler, I said, "Lord, if you'll allow us to open up a church, and I promise you that I'll love people no matter what." And so we began to pray, me and another trooper, a retired trooper, but Richie Miller. We began to pray every morning for a building to start a church. And I told him, I said, "I don't want anybody to know this, just me and you." Of course, you knew. But I want us to pray for God. If God wants us to start a church, then I want God to move without anybody else knowing anything. And we met there every morning to pray. And if you remember right, it was in September we had prayed from May, June, July, August, September. I would preach other places, but if I didn't have a meeting, I would come here on Sundays and traveled as an evangelist. And I asked you, I said, "Jeff," I said, "when's God going to do something?" I was working in the drug world. I picked up dead people more than I wanted to. I saw the results of all that more than I wanted to. And you said, "Well, I don't know, but the message tonight ain't going to help nothing, or ain't going to help you any." And you preached a message that night. It was September the 11th, I think it was, of 2011. You preached, "When are you going to do something for God?" And it was at the church on Clay's Mill. I went to the altar.
That's right.
And I said, "Lord, I don't know what's keeping you from doing something, but I want to do whatever you want me to do." And went back home. Me and Richie, we met, and a guy came through there. It was September. And I prayed that night. I said, "Lord, would you do something before October?" And I know you don't put time limits on God, and I wasn't putting a time limit on God. That's just what I
We
pray.
all do the same. We all pray like that.
And September the 28th, a fellow came through, and he said, "What are you boys doing out here?" That's we praying for this building here for a church. He said, "A church?" He said, "Are you boys Christians?" And I said, "Yes." And I talked to him about being saved, and he kind of laughed at us. And he said, "Them people that owns that place, they're Christians like you boys." Said, "I hope they do you right." And he just left and kind of, like I said, made fun of us. And 2 days later, the barber, Larry, called me, and he said, "Glenn wants to get up with you boys." And I called him, and And he said, I don't know what you boys is praying. He said, but I ain't slept in 2 nights. He said, I want to show you a building. And he took us not to the building we were praying for, but across the road, across the Hal Rogers Parkway, Danny Boone Parkway, was the old Hillbilly Palace bar, TJ's Hillbilly Palace. And so when we went over there to meet him, when we turned that curve, I told Richie, I said, man, the Lord's answered our prayer. I knew he had. We went in the building. Of course, it was dark and nasty. Actually, we didn't have a key. He came, and he called for a fellow to bring the key. And we went in. He said, I ain't got time to fool you fellas. He said, call me and let me know what you want to do. And he left. And we got down on them old bar stools that day.
The Hillbilly Palace.
And, yep. And God allowed us to get that building. And, we went in there and it was nasty. You saw it. You came down and walked through it. And, Budweiser kegs and dance floor. They was, on the dance floor, there was 2 big piles of hair where evidently somebody had
been in a big fight.
Bad fight. Yeah. Yeah. It was funny. I had, we had arrested people out of there and done, but anyway, God give us that building. And, we told him, we will take the building. He said, well, have you got any money? I said, no, I ain't got no money. And he said, it was $230,000 total is what they owed on the building. They paid $650 or something for it. And, he said, can you pay the interest on the loan? I said, well, how much is that? He said, it'd be about $700 a month. And I said, well, I think we can. And he said, I'm going to call the bank and they're going to freeze the loan for a year, let you just pay the interest. And so that's what we done. And of course, Clay's Mill invested, a lot of money into it when we first started. And there was local people that bought the sheetrock. There was local people that helped buy the chairs, just everything there a beam that went down the middle, that goes down the middle of the auditorium, 75, 80 foot beam, 15-inch I-beam or 18-inch I-beam.
And how long has that been now?
That's been, it'll be 15 years this December. And we've seen God has done a lot. The lady that her son had died, Christina, she got saved and baptized at our church.
Amen.
And the Lord's blessed us to be able to see a lot of people saved and, a lot of people baptized. And, we run right now between, 270 and 300 on most good days.
And just bought new property out on 80?
We just bought new property
out on 80. Plans to build a new building.
Yes, sir.
That's amazing.
Yes, sir. The Lord blessed.
What a story.
Yep.
I hate to end this podcast, but I'm going to end it introducing the next podcast.
All right.
It was during that time that Governor Matt Bevin called me and said, I need a candidate from Southeast Kentucky. Would you bring your brother to my office and let me talk to him about being state representative? We're going to talk about that on the next podcast.
Okay. Sounds good.
It's been a joy to talk to my brother and to rehearse all of the stories, what it was like to become a trooper and to go through the training and all of that. I appreciate you watching today, and I trust it has been a blessing and an encouragement to you. If you would like to contact us, my email address is pastorfugate@msn.com. You could contact either one of us by sending that to me, and I'll forward that to Chris, and we'd be glad to hear from you. Now, the next time I interview Chris, we're going to go to the State House in Frankfort and learn about not only his work, but some of the things that go on in Frankfort. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening to the Jeff Fugate Podcast today.